30 acres, and Emmy and I are here to talk about it on part two of this week's edition of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. My name is Michael Wein. I am your host. You can find me at Michael_Wein1 on X, and I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic co-host and fellow Longhorn fanatic, Emmy Nixon, who you can find at Emmy_Nixon on X. In today's part two of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, we will be discussing the start of what Sean Miller has to the 2025-2026 Texas basketball roster, which you can see on your screen if you're watching on YouTube. But if you're listening on podcast, we will talk all about that and his first transfer commit. Who did Texas pick up in the portal to kick off this team building process? And on the back half, we will talk some baseball, some bad injury news, but at the same time, a big series against another top 5 opponent this weekend in the SEC for Texas baseball, who sit at 23-4 on the season and 8-1 in the SEC. Max Ballou, unfortunately, going down for the season with a thumb injury and a wrist injury. We'll talk about that and how the Longhorns can withstand that going in to the back half of the season as we've officially hit the halfway point of the college baseball regular season. It doesn't feel that way necessarily, but the Longhorns have played 27 games already, and in the middle of May, now that we're at the start of April, the SEC tournament begins. So we're already kind of halfway through the year as we've already been playing baseball for a month and a half. So we'll get into all that today, but we're going to start on the basketball side of things. Emmy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. We were planning on starting this about an hour ago, but I had some things I needed to take care of first. But I'm glad we're getting it in. It's pretty late now. It's about 10:20 at night here, but you know, there's a lot to cover. As you said, there's a ton of news to cover. So let's get into it.
Before we get into it, can I give one shout out?
Yeah.
Shout out and congratulations to our guy. Talk about him a lot on this show and on the Raw Prospect Football Podcast, Josh Pate, who got engaged today. So congratulations to him.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
do you got
So
for me?
yeah. So first thing to cover for Texas basketball now is just some portal nuggets. So first off, the pickup of Dailyn Swain, forward from Xavier, following Sean Miller over. How will Dailyn Swain fit into the plans for the 25-26 roster?
Well, I think it's a huge pickup. It's a huge first pickup in the portal for Sean Miller and company for a couple reasons. Number one, Dailyn Swain is going to be a rising junior. He's been on the peripherals of some NBA draft raiders already with what he did during the second half of his sophomore season this past year at Xavier. Put up 27 points in their round of 64 game against Illinois. He really had a breakout in that game. He's got the potential to really break out offensively next year. He averaged 11 points per game, 5.5 rebounds and 2.5 assists. So he's a pretty well-rounded player. But he's got a really good chance to really develop his offensive game this offseason and become more of an all-around offensive player as a two-way wing. Texas did not have a lot of effective two-way wings with his size and his switchability last year. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. Now, NBA scouts say that if he takes another leap next year like he did in his sophomore year, he'll likely be off to the professional ranks after playing only one season for Texas. But he has 2 years of eligibility left. So that's good. That's number one. Number two, He's going to provide Texas with a defensive anchor on the perimeter. He's 6'8", 6'9", with great athleticism, great length, and he is a shutdown perimeter defender. You can put him on point guards. You can put him on forwards. You can switch him 1 through 4. I don't know if he can guard fives. Maybe he can guard small ball fives, but he can effectively guard 1 through 4. He's switchable, and he gives them some size in the perimeter defense that they didn't have a whole lot of last year. It was better than the year before, but switchable wings in college basketball, length. You look at the Final Four teams this year. What does Houston have? What does Auburn have? What does Duke have? They've got size on the perimeter. They're able to affect you in ball screens, and Dailyn Swain can give you some of that. And then he's an effective, like, off the ball and on ball slasher. He's got a good handle for a guy his size. He's not a great shooter, only shot 25% from 3 this past year. That's a part of his game he's going to have to develop. In order for him to really fit on this roster, they're going to have to surround him with some better shooters. But I think he'll be a guy that'll start at either the 3 or the 4. He will be a starter for this team. And he'll be a guy that will be able to get his when he's able to get to the rim. He's a really good finisher and a guy that they can rely on as a guy that can guard the other team's best player for majority of the game on the other end. He's a big pickup. He's ranked as a top 30 player in the transfer portal, or was ranked that way by 24/7 Sports. And there's over like 1,500 players in the transfer portal. So this guy's really good. And he absolutely went off in the last game that he played against Illinois, who was a really good team. And he actually shot, I think, 3 for 5 from 3 that game. So I really like Dailyn Swain. Of course, this can't be the only piece, but it's a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the thing that I'll add too, I think the feel in the half court is, better than what you see a lot of times from a non-shooter. I think he knows when to cut, he knows when to, move without the ball, and he knows where he needs to be on the floor. And he has some high level experience, obviously, with that Xavier program. So, yeah, really good pickup. The next question for you, is just addressing a couple of these returns that Texas has had announced in these last couple of days. First off is Jordan Pope, of course, the guard that transferred from Indiana State last year. He will be returning. First off, lead off with just what are your thoughts on his return?
Of all the potential returnees, he was one that I was kind of 50-50 on. But I think as a fourth-year senior next year, if in a better structured offense under Sean Miller, as a guy that is really good and was really good for most of the season hitting like those mid-range off the dribble jump shots and can get it going from 3. He has the floor spacing capabilities. The one thing he struggled with, though, a lot of the time was just the size of a lot of opposing guards he went up against in the SEC and dribbling around a lot of these bigger perimeter defenders. That was something that he struggled with this past year. That's something that I kind of worry about. But I think in a bench role, it's like a 6th or a 7th man. It's a guy that kind of patrols the bench and doesn't really have to be the point guard of this team. I really like him in that role because he's a guy that can come off the bench and get you double figures per night off the bench. And I think that takes some pressure off him. He's a 4th-year senior. And I think next year will be the year where he hopefully takes the lead because Texas is going to need him to, especially as an off-the-dribble penetrator and distributor of the basketball. when Texas got him in the portal last spring, he was a guy that led Oregon State in scoring. Sort of like Tremont Mark, who's the next guy we're going to talk about, led Arkansas in scoring. The problem was both of those teams last year were bad teams. They did not make the tournament. They neither came close to really making the tournament. Things went sour really for both programs. In Oregon State's case, outside of Jordan Pope, they just didn't really have the talent. And in Arkansas's case, it was just a bunch of they were talented. They just were kind of like Texas this past year. They were kind of misfit toys. I believe in both these guys. I do believe in Jordan Pope. I just want him to be a guy that more so is coming off the bench. Again, he'll need to work on penetrating and distributing. Didn't do a whole lot of that this past year. I don't think he is a lead point guard in college basketball like maybe we thought he was last year. Julian Larry actually ended up playing, I think, more minutes than Jordan Pope at points and times in the season. But as an off the bench spark and a good off the dribble shooter, a guy that can get his own shot, I like the fact that he's coming back along with Tremont Mark, who we can just go ahead and get into, who really gave this Texas team a spark, especially in the SEC tournament in a bunch of games this year where he paired with Trey Johnson to be like the best players on this team. Late in the season, Rodney Terry moved him to the point guard role, and he really excelled in that role. He's a lefty, so he kind of has an unorthodox jump shot when you watch him, but that's more size on the perimeter. It's more continuity with him and Jordan Pope coming back, and I like that. And they're both experienced players. And now they both have a year in the program, even though it's not under the same regime or coaching staff. I think Sean Miller is going to be able to, with his offensive acumen, really put the pieces together a little bit better than Rodney Terry was able to. I do think Tremont Mark will start for this team. I don't want him to be the starting point guard, though. Even though it worked at the end of this past year, that can't be your plan for a full year in the SEC. And I don't think it's going to be because they're pursuing other guards in the portal right now. But in the world that we live in college athletics, especially in college basketball, it's good to have some continuity, at least a little bit of it. And with Tremont Mark and Jordan Pope coming back, you at least have guys who've been in the program for a year now and guys that have played together. So I like that. It's really more than they had, coming back last year. So depending on what Kendall Weaver does, this could look really good because they're experienced and they're good players. And we'll see what they look like in Sean Miller's system.
Right. Okay, and last up for Texas basketball before we move on to baseball is what is the latest on Kendall Weaver and his chances of returning?
Well, the short of it is I think he's going to return. People around the program are sensing that they feel like he's going to return. There's really nothing more to add. And I would love if he would return. Because he is just an energizer bunny when he enters the game. Things feel different when he's in the game. And he'll add to what could be a really good perimeter defense because while he might not be Dailyn Swain, he gives effort on that end of the floor every night. He goes 110%. And in the SEC, you need guys like that make winning basketball plays, that are willing to be selfish or unselfish, and take charges dive for loose balls, dive for 50-50 balls, get rebound as a smaller guard. Like Kendall Weaver does all of those things. He's not going to go out and get you 15 points a night. There might be some nights where he does that, but he's on the team to be like a Brock Cunningham, to play kind of that role. But I think he can be better than Brock Cunningham. And that's saying a lot because Brock was a really good, locker room guy and just dirty work player for this program for a bunch of years.
Right.
He was really valuable to what they were able to do in that Elite Eight run. Kendall Weaver can play a similar role. It'll depend on what they do, what more they bring in the portal to determine whether or not Kendall Weaver starts. But you could definitely plug him in as like a spot starter when you need it. And I hope he does return, because then you got Kendall Weaver, who's a fourth-year senior and has been 2 years in the program. Tremont Mark, who's played a ton of college basketball, is a 6-year senior. And Jordan Pope, who's been in the program as a fourth-year senior. And then you complement those group of guys with the transfers that you bring in and some of the younger guys in this program, like a Nick Cody, who played sparingly this past year, but will be a true sophomore and probably play a bigger role in the front court. And all of a sudden, you got a good mix of players on next year's roster. You'll just have to it'll be up to Sean Miller's staff to figure out how to put the pieces together. But I have a lot more confidence that he'll be able to do it than I did Rodney Terry. And we already kind of addressed all the Rodney Terry stuff. So
right.
I would expect Kendall Weaver to return. He's not a guy that's going to go to the NBA. So it's either portal or return for him. And it feels like Sean Miller's staff is doing a really good job of retention. And I just think he's waiting to announce his decision. I think we'll know by the next time we record.
All right. Anything else to address before we move on from Texas basketball?
Not on the men's side. I'm sure there will be more commitments and maybe some other portal nuggets we'll discuss in our next week's edition of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, with other programs too. Portal's really busy right now, along with the coaching carousel. I think that'll probably be our main focus, because Texas wasn't the only program to make a coaching move. In fact, on the basketball side of things, we won't get into this right now. Buzz Williams, the head coach at Texas A&M, took the Maryland job after Kevin Willard, Maryland's head coach, took the Villanova job. And so the coaching carousel's been wild at the Power 5 level. And so now A&M's looking for a new head coach. And they reached out to Chris Beard. And Chris Beard leveraged A&M to get a 6-year extension at Ole Miss. So he's not going to A&M. He was their top candidate. He's staying at Ole Miss. Good for Ole Miss for retaining their basketball coach. And now A&M's left to look at, whatever other options there are. I've heard Chris Jans, who's a good coach at Mississippi State. Alan Huss, who is at the mid-major level, took High Point to the tournament this past year. He's a good basketball coach. We'll see where A&M goes, but that's a big story right now in the college basketball realm, is who's going to take the A&M job.
Yeah. And Chris Beard is a Texas alum at the end of the day, so I don't think he would stoop that low as to go live in College Station. So good on him for that.
He is a guy that is aspirational, and A&M really went after him hard. He's from Texas, so he knows the talent bed in Texas, and he knows kind of the way of the way things work in Texas. And with A&M's resources, the commitment they're seem to be making to basketball, I think at the end of the day, he wanted to stay at Ole Miss, but he did really consider taking the A&M job. So good for him for getting an extension. Even though, look, he Chris Beard, think what you want. Hate him as a person. I don't really have much respect for him anymore as a person, but that guy is a fucking damn good basketball coach, regardless of what you think of him otherwise.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
because he's
let's leave it at that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's move on to Texas baseball. What do you got for me on that end?
Yeah, baseball, man. It's been a fantastic start to the season, but as of recently, we've had some bad news break on the baseball front. Max Bellew, the first the leading starter, I guess you could say, on the pitching staff, is out for the season. So, my first question for you, there's Max Bellew and then a couple of other injuries as well, actually. So my question for you is, will Texas be able to weather the recent injury attrition?
I think so. I I do think so. Bellew's the biggest loss here. Um, he was going to be a guy that I thought was going to be for sure first or second team All American this season, and he was a big time catalyst of this offense. And was just like really rounding into his mid-season form when he got hurt. It was really unfortunate because they played Missouri this past weekend. It's really hard to go on the road and win in the SEC, especially in baseball. Um, but Missouri's not a very good team. They're towards the bottom of the barrel in the SEC, one of the worst teams in the SEC, let's just say that. But if you play with your food in any road series in the SEC, you can end up losing the series, no matter who it's against. Texas did a really good job of not playing with their food in that series. The unfortunate part was they were up like 15-0 early on. They were just belting home runs and hitting the ball all over the place in Columbia against a not very good Missouri team. I think this was in game one of the series. Texas really fucking put it on them. Anyway, Bellew was still in the game because they were up 15-0, but it was still pretty early on in the game. It was like the fourth or fifth inning. So you're not taking your starters out that early. And he dove for a fly ball, made the catch, made a really nice defensive play. He just ended up coming up weird on how he landed on his hand. And he fractured his thumb, tore some tendons in his thumb, and did something to his wrist. And so they were hopeful that it wasn't going to be too serious when it initially happened. But they got the MRI, they got the x rays, and came back that he has a fractured thumb and some torn tendons in his thumb. And so he cannot go the rest of the season. He was one of their better offensive players, period.
Yeah, I got him and our transfer pitcher mixed up. Actually, that's my bad.
Yeah, one of the better bats in the country, and that guy's gonna, if it's his last, if that was his last moment as a Longhorn, that's really unfortunate. But
Yeah,
because he was the Big 12 Player of the Year last year, he could have been if Texas were to go on and do some really great things this season, be in contention for SEC Player of the Year. But I think Texas will be fine. Of course, you'd love to have a guy like Max Bellew. But Will Gasparino is one of the hottest hitters in the country right now. He's got, I think it's 6 home runs in his last 7 games. I've started to call him Will Mash Perino because he's just mashing baseballs to left field, to right field, to center field. He's starting to really I think things are really starting to slow down for him at the plate. And he's been really good. And as long as the two other names that you mentioned, who both have minor injuries, luckily they're nothing serious, are back in the lineup sooner rather than later, they're going to be fine because Rylan Galvan has been one of the better catchers in America. He's already got 9 home runs this season. The power from him has been unbelievable. He's been really good. He just got hit in the finger in one of the games against Missouri. Took a couple games off and was back in the lineup as a DH against Texas State on Tuesday. So I think he'll be okay. He looks, with a couple days off, he'll be back to full health sooner rather than later. He just kind of got jammed on a finger shot. And then Adrian Rodriguez, the young third baseman, who was really doing some great stuff in the first month and a half of the season. I think did something to his ankle or his hamstring or his calf, whatever it is, something with his lower extremities. And he's been out. He was out for the Missouri series. He's questionable to play in this Georgia series. It'd be nice if Texas could have him because Georgia's a team that mashes like they're might be the best offense in the country. That's why they're ranked number 3. And so Texas is going to need all the offensive firepower they can muster to possibly win this series. But regardless of whether or not he plays this weekend, my focus, now that Texas is ranked as a top 5 team in the country, is I would rather have them fully healthy starting next week, going the rest of the season, than to risk playing him if he's not 100% this weekend and him doing something on the base pass that aggravates that what is now a minor injury into a major injury where you lose him for a month or 2 or maybe the rest of the season. Like, I don't want to risk any player's long-term health just to win this series against Georgia, if that makes sense. And I don't think they're going to. But I think Texas will be able to survive. I think they have enough offensively. Gasparino's stepping up. Galvan's been awesome. Adrian Rodriguez, when he comes back, has been really good. Ethan Mendoza, the second baseman, has been really good. He's not a power bat, but he hits doubles line to line. He's a good contact bat, doesn't strike out a lot, works his walks. I think a guy that's going to have to step up is Easton Winfield, especially in the outfield. They're going to need him to step up a little bit. He was a transfer in from Louisiana Monroe as a freshman last year, hit over 300 with like 10 home runs and 40 RBIs. They're going to need him to step up a little bit and maybe a couple others. Casey Borba at third base is another name that needs to step up a little bit. But Tommy Farmer's had a good season so far. He's been really good, especially his defense in left field. I think Texas, the strength coming into the season was the group of position players. And I think with the depth there, they're going to be okay. They'll be okay. Now, what does the Max Ballou injury mean for the postseason? Well, that's a different story. We'll see when we get there. We'll see what the state of the team looks like when we get there. But for now, I think they'll be all right. Even though it sucks. It absolutely sucks, for sure.
Yeah, it really does. But I think, like you said, it's more about getting healthy at the right time, getting hot at the right time. As it is a little bit with MLB baseball as well. It's like late into the season, like around SEC tournament time, that's when you want to get hot and play your best baseball. So I think for this team right now, I don't know if I'm right to be thinking Omaha, but I'm thinking Omaha, honestly, and possibly even, maybe even thinking higher than that if things really line up. But it's been extremely impressive to see this team flip around this quickly.
Yeah. All right, last topic of the night. What do we have on the baseball side of things?
The last topic of the night is you mentioned the Georgia series. We're going to give a kind of a quick preview on what what we're going to expect facing Georgia. So how does Texas stack up against number 3 Georgia? And then secondly, who are some impact players to keep an eye on from Georgia's side?
Well, I think the biggest storyline of this series is going to be how Texas's outstanding pitching staff, and yes, I said outstanding because they've been outstanding to this point in the season, how they're going to fare against Georgia's relentless offense. The team ERA for the Longhorns at the midpoint of the season is 3.22. That's third in the country. Their whip, walks and hits per inning, is 1.21, which ranks 10th in the country. And they're only giving up 7.15 hits per game, which ranks 8th in the country. They're top 10 in pretty much all the important pitching metrics. Which, if you told me that at the beginning of the season, with the questions on this pitching staff, I would have called you high and drug tested you right away. But it's been fantastic. Nearly every arm on the staff, outside of a few bad appearances here and there, has been excellent. Especially the left-handed duo that they have as their Friday and Saturday night starters. Jared Spencer, who's 3-1 with a 3.62 ERA, and Luke Harrison, who's also pitched very well to start the season. And then you have a guy like Dylan Volantis, who's started some Sunday games. He's 2-0 with a 1.17 ERA, and it's absolutely nasty as a guy out of the bullpen. And a guy like Ruhir Riojas, who's been fantastic. Jared Spencer's blossomed into a legitimate SEC Friday night starter, which is unbelievable for this Texas team. And Volantis, again, like I mentioned, has been deployed in a bunch of roles. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife, so to speak, on this pitching staff. But when you look at Georgia and you look at their offense, it's been the best offense statistically in the country so far. They've hit 79 home runs so far this season. They're first in the country. They are mashing baseballs.
Wow. And they've played like 25 games?
Well, they're 29-2. They've played a little bit more than Texas has. So they played 31 games, but they're hitting pretty much, almost 3 home runs per game. Wow. They're first in home runs. They're first in runs, total runs. They're 6th in hits. They're 4th in walks. They're 2nd in slugging percentage. They're 4th in hit by pitches. They're 7th in fielding percentage, so they're also pretty good defensively. They're in the top 10 in pretty much every offensive category. And so I think the Texas pitching against the Georgia lineup is the matchup of this series. Now on offense, they're going to be without Max Ballou. That's a massive loss, but you still got Jalen Flores, who is hitting 300, 379 on base and a 613 slug. I think the Longhorns will have the hitting needed to compete in this series, especially since Georgia's starters have kind of been more vulnerable. It just hasn't mattered because they put up so many goddamn runs. Their offense is so explosive. They can put a crooked number on you at any time. But in terms of guys to look out for, Robbie Burnett and Rylan Zaborowski are their two big dudes in the middle of that lineup. 365, 564, and a 906 slug for Robbie Burnett. And Rylan Zabrowski, a 448 batting average, a 579 on base percentage, and a 1.011 slugging percentage. They rank first and second in the country with 15 and 14 home runs, respectively. So those two guys have hit 29 home runs combined.
He's getting on
The
base almost
respective
60% of the time.
Yep. And
That's fucking nuts.
the respective RBI totals are, of 47 and 48 RBIs respectively, both ranking inside the top 5 in the country. So they're first and second in home runs, and they're both top 5 in RBIs. There's no breaks in this Bulldogs lineup. So if you're the Longhorns and you're Jared Spencer, you're Luke Harrison, you're Dylan Volantis, you're Ruhir Riojas, you walk 2 guys, 1 swing is all it takes. Now the good thing is, I think the Dish is a little bit more of a pitcher's park than where Georgia plays their home games, but 1 inning and the game can be out of reach with these Bulldogs. And so every guy in the lineup can do damage. It's kind of the same thing with Texas, but the key for Texas, I think, in the series is just keeping them in the park as much as you can. Make them hit doubles instead of home runs. Don't let them barrage you with home runs. I don't know how you do that. I'm not a baseball savant. But if anybody can figure this out, it's Max Weiner and company.
Make them base runners. Make them have to be smart.
We'll see what happens.
Make them have to work for it.
You also cannot give them extra outs. Meaning you can't make errors. You can't make careless errors, which gives them extra outs. If that makes sense. But I'm kind of hoping if things turn into a pitching duel, I never thought I'd say this, but I think Texas has the advantage. If things turn into a slugfest, it will be a really fun series. It'll just be interesting to see if how Texas fares in that situation, given they might be without Adrian Rodriguez temporarily, and they're of course now without Max Baloo. So
right.
Yeah. I think if you're Texas, you just don't want to get swept. You've given yourself a really nice cushion, luckily, with some of these injuries popping up at 8-1 in the SEC. You just wouldn't want to get swept here. If you can get a game, that would be awesome against a team like Georgia. But if you can win this series and go into next week, which is really the halfway point after this series, if you win the series, you'll be 25-5, 20 games over 500, and you'll be 10-2 in the SEC with a series win over number 5 Georgia and a series win over a top 10 LSU team. I mean, holy shit. Now you're looking at top 8 national seed kind of resume where you could be hosting a regional and a super regional.
Wow.
And look, I think people knew that when Texas hired Schlossnagle, and this is kind of where we'll wrap things up as it's approaching 11 p.m. When Texas hired Schlossnagle, I think people knew that he was going to win big eventually because he's won big everywhere he's been, whether that's TCU or A&M. I just don't know that people thought it would necessarily be this fast in year 1. But he's doing it, so good on him.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That was a success of an episode, I would say. We got through a lot in just under 40 minutes here. Do you have any parting shots for us before we call it?
My parting shot would be go Lady Longhorns tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Central Time, Final Four against South Carolina.
Yeah.
Big game. The 4th time these two programs have met this season. We don't see that a lot in sports. There will be no tricks up either coach's sleeves on either side because these two teams pretty much know everything that you can know about the opposite team, the opposing team. It'll just come down to who plays better basketball tomorrow. And I think for the Longhorns, a couple quick keys. If you can shoot over 40%, that would be great. limit your turnovers and just play your defense without fouling.
Yeah.
The Texas women, I kind of liken them to Houston in a way with how tough and how scrappy they are on defense and kind of the pace they play on offense. In South Carolina, they want to get out and run. So the good thing for Texas is they come into this game knowing that they can beat the beast that is South Carolina. They did it literally like a month ago, or a little over a month ago. But in the other two games they have played South Carolina, they just haven't played good basketball, and they've lost both games by a pretty wide margin. So it'll just be what outcome happens. But it would be freaking awesome if we come on next week's edition of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, either on Sunday or on Tuesday, talking about Texas either having played for the national championship or playing for the national championship. That would be amazing.
Yeah, man, that would be huge. The last thing I'll say is back to baseball for a second. That Texas-Georgia series, it means something, man. Like, these dudes, like, they were probably at that Texas-Georgia football game. They probably watched Texas get swept in football. I mean, if you think these dudes don't feel that, they do, man. Like, it's going to mean something extra on top of it being a top 5 matchup. So it's going to be pretty sick.
Yeah, Georgia's had the one team that has kind of had Texas's number so far in the SEC has been Georgia, because they beat them twice on the football field, and they beat them in the Moody Center pretty badly towards the end of the regular season in basketball. So, yeah, that's a good point by you. Hook 'em horns, guys. We'll see you next week again for more NFL draft content on our football show and some more Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. We're really going to focus in on more spring football and the coaching carousel in college basketball, because I find this stuff really, really interesting with some of these power programs. And then we might delve a little bit into what happened in the Final Four in the national championship. Have fun watching basketball this weekend. Keep up with all the news coming in along the 40 acres. It never stops, and we're here to talk about it every week here on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. So I'm Michael Wein. Again, you can find me at Michael_Wein1 on X. He's Emmy Nixon. You can find him at Emmy_Nixon on X. And we'll see you next time on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Good night. Hook 'em.
Peace.